First Epistle to the Thessalonians, chapter 4, verse 3. And it says very, very clearly, for this is the will of God. So every time you ask, what's God's will for me? Every time you think it, every time you want to reach it, every time it occurs to you, what is God's will for me? Remember this verse, 1 Thessalonians 4:3. This is the will of God. Very clear. It's not maybe, it's not sometimes, it's not well, maybe it depends. This is the will of God. And then it's two words. So the will of God comes down to two words. You know what those words are? Your sanctification. This is the will of God, your sanctification. As I was coming on the way, I was chatting with Sayyidina. We were talking about the challenges that face us in our service because they face you on a daily basis. And what are those questions? What are the things you struggle with every day? I'm sure that one of them is the concept of what's right and what's wrong. What is appropriate, what's not appropriate. The sense of purity and holiness. Whether we're talking about substance abuse, alcohol, drugs, whether we're talking about sexual activity and promiscuity, whether we're talking about gender issues, whether we're talking about choices and honesty, all of those things. The challenge is holiness. You can come to me and say, well, what do I do in this situation? What do I do in this situation? What do I do in this situation? And it becomes a difficult question to answer. And then, although you may be able to come ask Sayyidina, one of the fathers, what do I do in this situation? Often what happens is you will find yourself in situations where you don't have anyone to ask. You need to make a decision now. You get faced with a situation at school, at university, at work. You need to make a decision now. You don't have time to call or to meet. And so that's why we need to understand the basis of who we are. Should I be with this group of people? Should I do what they do? Should I make these choices? Should I live this kind of life? Should I interact in this setting? They're all specific questions. What's our foundation? What's at the core of all this? The core of all this is this verse. Before you ask yourself, should you do it, should you not do it? Are people going to accept you? Are your parents going to be okay? Is your confession father okay? Are your friends okay? Is the world okay? Before any of that, ask yourself this one question. Does this lead to your sanctification? Does it make you a holy person? Because I'm sure if you ask that question at the beginning, it will filter out lots of things. It won't be any more, can I do this and get away with it? Can I be creative? Can I sort of hold the balance? That's not, God doesn't want, this doesn't say, for this is the will of God for you to live an okay life. For this is the will of God that you negotiate. For this is the will of God that you just get by. For this is the will of God that you just do the best you can. This is the will of God, your sanctification. So every time you come to ask yourself that question, do I do this or not? Do I go to this place or not? Do I say this thing or not? Do this. Ask yourself, does this make me a holier person? Does it add to my sanctification? And that will be your answer.